Orange Mountain Capital is who acquired Leaf.
I'm from the city is still. I'm from the city is still.
A couple months ago, there was news of Brian Gray stepping down. This Kevin dude stepped in. I guess he was like a predecessor to him.
Mhm.
To kind of take over. Brian spoke very highly of him. I know Sports Card Radio did like a live stream where they were like, we kind of know what's happening. We can't really speculate, but Brian's going to be like really well taken care of or whatever. Yada, yada, yada. He's going off into his retirement or whatever. So today it officially dropped that they have officially been acquired by Orange Mountain Capital. I'm guessing that's a capital investment firm, which it seems like there's a lot of that type of money coming into the hobby. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what they do. Leaf, I mean, they have certain sets like Pop Century that are really cool, that I like a lot. But then the thing that Leaf gets kind of a bad rep for is they're not licensed cards. It was cool to see them be able to sell, being that they didn't have those licensing. But what they've done with non-licensed cards, like Pop Century specifically, like I've been a really big fan of over the years. But yeah, to your point, Sean, I don't know who the hell Orange Mountain is.
Yeah.
From what Neo said, they're a reasonably new founded company.
If you Google
Maybe they
Orange
just
Mountain
grabbed-
Capital, nothing comes up.
In this specific video, Neo does say they're a reasonably new formed entity. So I don't know if any of these people have hobby experience, if they're a hobby related anything, or if maybe they were just like, hey, it'd be cool to print some cards.
They were smart, right? You know, they had baseball, they had some of the other sports and everything, and then when they couldn't compete, you know, they turned on a dime and went a completely opposite direction, and it has kept them viable for a long time.
You know something
Right.
interesting? I don't think this iteration of Leaf is even the same one that we had like back in like the 80s and 90s. I think that like Brian Gray like noticed that that was a recognizable brand that people would know, and he I don't know if he purchased what was left of it, and that old Leaf went bankrupt, and Brian kind of like revitalized the new Leaf. They always had cool products because of like majority of the products is like all autos. You know what I mean? So even if like you're buying into a break, you still end up with someone's autograph, which is kind of cool.
I think, you know, when you look at Leaf, like I said, you know, they were smart from a standpoint of you know, they went after some of these people, got them on NIL deals, and then you know, you're able to lock them up for a certain amount of time. You know, I mean, Livy Dunn is it a perfect one. Now, you know, what could she be in? Well, she could be in, let's say, something like Topps Allen and Ginter, but
Mm-hmm.
you can't have her autograph. He really did. He thought outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he said, "How do I go ahead and remain relevant with all the stuff that is going on?" And he found a way to do it by going after, the actors and actresses,
Yep.
and going after some of the other type of sports stuff, whether it be, you know, gymnasts, whether it be, you know, the professional bowlers tour and some of these other stuff. So Orange listed in Delaware, looks like they might have just started in September. Well, there's a bunch of people who had a bunch of money, was sitting around a campfire in August and said, "Hey, what do you want to do?" I don't know.
Let's go print some cards.
But again, now you look at it from a standpoint of, we talk about the hobby, we talk about the direction of the hobby, we talk about collectors, investors. To me, your Orange Mountain Capital, I'm not saying you're not a collector or you're not a group of collectors, but you're more of investors. I mean, you know, you would think it along those lines and everything. So to your point, you know, you're bringing in, you know, not knowing what they are, so you can't make that assumption. But when you think it's a capital, you know, group, you're thinking, hey, that's an investment firm, that is putting a whole bunch of money together because they see something, they see a way of making more money. Whatever that way is going to be, who knows? But that's what they're kind of,
Well,
they're
look at
looking.
it this way: they're an investment firm. What a card manufacturers do? Print money.
Yeah.
They saw an avenue to print money, and they were like, maybe we should do that. I personally don't blame Brian Gray. Like, this is like the perfect time to have sold. Like,
Of course.
you know what I mean? Like, you literally see the writing on the wall. Like,
Yep.
Panini is literally being dragged out back by fanatics, like in
Right.
front of the entire neighborhood,
Yeah.
and they're being made an example of. You know what I mean? So, like, especially when you don't have licensing, like, it's very, very difficult to compete with that. Now, could they have been a very viable business or a viable number 3 or 4 in the industry? Absolutely. You know what I mean? But I don't think anybody ever gets in anything to be like a 3 or a 4. So I feel like this is like the perfect time to, like, you know, to sell. You know what I mean? And let somebody else with a lot more money come in and kind of take it to where, you know, wherever it's going to go.
If you are Brian Gray, you're sitting there and you're saying, "Hey, you know, what more, you know, can I accomplish with what I have? It ain't going to get easier, right? It's not.
Hmm.
It's not. I mean, it's not going to get easier for a company like Leaf. For Brian Gray, who he
Yeah,
is, he's not. It's not going to get easier for him to go ahead and break in and get. I mean, when you look at Fanatics and you look what they when they what they're going to be able to offer, it's going to be hard for him to get any kind of mainstream athlete to say yes, you can have my autograph, not the company, not Fanatics who owns everything.
correct.
From that standpoint, right? So it makes sense. Get in,
Mhm.
do what you got to do, and move. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it definitely worked out. I feel like it's been a success, especially under Brian. I don't know how much of the strategic vision was the guy who's still in control, or if it was like all Brian. I'm sure, like, obviously, like any CEO probably defers a good bit of, like the day to day operation. So I'm sure, like, the guy that's in control now probably has a pretty good track record of doing what Leaf did.
Locken's an insider. That's why his name begins with an L. Leaf Locken. Oh,
If you do become the new CEO at Leaf Lock-in, can you send me some hot boxes? Because apparently
well, no,
none of
you need
these
to come on the show
manufacturers.
for an interview.
Touche. None of these manufacturers respect us enough to send us hot boxes.
Right. And we'll
The
open them
disrespect,
live on the
Michael.
show. I mean, he was very strategic in what he did. Obviously, you know, it worked. He always, he was in the news a lot. Not saying good, bad, or indifferent doesn't make a difference, right? But you kind of, you kind of knew synonymously, Brian Gray, Leaf. I mean, if someone said Leaf, people went, "Oh, you mean Brian Gray?" People went, "Oh, Brian Gray." You mean, "Oh, Leaf Brian Gray?" Right? You know what I'm saying? So he did those things, from that standpoint. I mean, dude printed a card of himself.
I know. That
I
was
mean,
pretty cool.
come on, man.
Not only did
I'm
he
putting my
print a card
big
of
mug
himself,
on a card.
it says Super CEO.
Right. I mean, he was like, "I'll show you guys. Who
Yeah.
you who you think you're playing with?"
Yeah, we're gonna
You
get him
know.
on this show, man. I bet you he'd be a hoot to talk to.
But like I said, I think, from an overall standpoint, it's a good move for them. It's a great move for him. He gets to, he did. You got to figure if he took it over in 2010, 14 years old, close to 14, 13, 14 years,
Mhm.
of hard work and staying relevant.